Hey class, in this video I'm going to show you how to use Adobe Bridge to edit a raw file. First, open up Adobe Bridge, which I have open right now, and what I like to do is use the Essentials workspace. It may default to libraries. I like to use Essentials. It separates the source, a preview, and the metadata the way I like to see my files. So I have it under Essentials view right now, and I'm going to locate where all my files are for the class. And they would be on an external hard drive in this example. So right now on the left side, I'm under a section called Folders, and it's going to show me my computer, which is expanded now, and I have all my different hard drive sources within this computer. My images have been stored in a hard drive called instructor-rp. Your images for your class may be located somewhere else depending on where you decided to place them. Okay, so for mine, I'm going to be referring to my hard drive as instructor-rp. In here, I have a folder called Art151. I'm going to click on that, and then I have a project 2 folder with a subfolder of all images where I've shot everything for this particular project. I'm going to go into that. I'm going to take a look at one of these images, this one of Cookie here. And the way I like to organize my workspace is to give my preview a little bit more space so I could see it by clicking on these borders that become that change your mouth to 2 arrows, so you can actually change the width in this case and then the height of the preview window here. Okay, and by the way, this is a really easy way to view your images to see which ones you would like to submit for a project. So if I click on the first image here, I can use the cursor keys to just navigate throughout this set of images to figure out which one would qualify for a particular project. So I'm going to work on this one right now because there is some problem areas that we can use the Bridges raw editing tool to correct the problem areas in this image. So this is a raw image. It is a .raf file. It is not a JPEG file. This .raf extension belongs to Fujifilm cameras. Nikon's will be .nef. Canon's could be .cr2, cr3. And so depending on the camera make you have, if you set your camera to raw mode, you will get some native extension based upon that camera's brand. And you will be able to use Bridge to open up and edit raw files. Raw files are files that are uncompressed, that have no adjustments to them, and you need a raw file processor such as Bridge or Lightroom or Photoshop in order for you to open them up and make some adjustments to them. So I selected this image of Cookie on my desk to work on. So if I want to make edits on this image, I have to click on this icon on the top left here, which looks like sort of like a lens opening or a leaf shutter, and it will give you a tool tip that says open up in camera raw. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and it's going to open up the camera raw window with a tool set to make changes to this. The first thing I want to do is bring your attention to the histogram on the upper right. If you click on these warning triangles, this one is for blown out exposures, overexposure, and this is for underexposure. It's very subtle, but the underexposure areas are marked in blue, and then the overexposed areas are marked in red by clicking on these triangles in the histogram. The histogram is a visual representation, a graphical representation of a photograph. To the right here, where you have the whites, it's the brightest tone, and then right to the left of it is the highlights. To the very, very left here is the blacks, is the darkest tone, and then slightly to the right of the blacks is the shadows, the second darkest tone in the image. Whenever you see a histogram, if it doesn't finish in terms of its sort of like peak and valley, especially to the right and to the left, that means there is an issue with an image. So for example, you notice that this image is slamming up to the right. It never comes back down from this area. This is an indicator of an overexposure. And similarly to the left, it's not quite slammed as dramatically. However, it does not quite finish this mountain and does not become a valley again. It kind of ends right here. Hence, there is some underexposure, which we could see from the warning colors here. So let's deal with the overexposure here first. That's completely overexposed. Under this area here, you have all these sliders that are global edits, meaning whenever you adjust any of these sliders, it's going to modify the entire image, not just an isolated area. So for example, exposure is going to change the brightness of the entire image. So if I wanted to get rid of this, to make this go away, this red warning, and to see more detail, I would scroll this to the right and notice that now it's actually gone, but what happened was it made everything else underexposed. Okay, notice there is detail here. Because I shot in raw format, it was able to retain the detail of this area. It's no longer blown out. We actually see detail on this curtain. However, because I did exposure for the entire image, everything gets underexposed now, but that gets corrected. So I'm going to reset this. And maybe I'm going to bring it down just a little bit. But then I also just only want to affect this area. This is, I think it's a highlight. So I believe I can actually just modify the highlights, and it'll adjust all the highlights in this image. So I'm going to go into this highlight slider here, and I'm going to go to the left and notice that now it's not really affecting the entire image. It's affecting all the highlights in the image, but not the shadows or the blacks or the overall exposures, just the highlights. So I'm going to keep going down here, and I notice I can go to like minus 89, and finally I have the detail back in there. I'm going to bring the exposure back up a little bit. I don't think I needed to do that exposure. I think that's pretty good as in terms of the highlights. Now I want to address the underexposed areas here where it's in blue. So I'm going to go into the shadows and see if that will help out with that. Not too much. Okay, so I think it is the blacks here that I can move to the right, and now it is that pretty much took care of it. And if you notice, whenever I was making changes to any of these sliders, this histogram was moving. So I'll move it again I'll move the highlights back, and notice that is now slamming to the right. If I were to bring it back to the left, it is now bringing that the highlights area is no longer slamming to the right. It's actually within a proper exposure. And similarly to the blacks, it's no longer slammed to the left. I'm going to move it to the right, and you could see it become like a valley, right? There's a peak and valley here, so it's actually finishing the histogram. So this is an example of a good exposure where everything is within the left and right of the histogram, right? So at this point, my highlights are under control, my shadows are under control. It's a decent exposure. Let's just say for now that I want to go ahead and use this image to submit for an assignment, or if I wanted to send it to somebody via email or post it somewhere online on a website or social media. I'm going to hit done, and notice that there is this sort of slider icon on the top right of the thumbnail of this image. That means that this image has been edited with the Camera Raw tools in Bridge, as opposed to these other raw files that have not been touched. Okay. The thing with raw files is that not everyone can see them, and nor will they be able to see these changes that you made for this raw file until you export it to a usable format. A usable format would be, let's say, a JPEG. That is a universal file extension that pretty much any device can render and display. Not all devices can read raw files. You want to make sure that you export any raw file changes to a JPEG so someone else can actually see your work. You don't ever want to give a raw file out to anybody because they won't be able to see your edits without another piece of information, which is the sidecar file that stores all this information. By nature, raw files cannot be edited. You can only record changes that you want to apply to them. So for example, I'm going to just show you the file system. I'm going to right click on this image and I'm going to say go to Finder. If I could find that on here. Reveal in Finder. Here it is. So this is going to show me where this file lives on my operating system on the Mac. Notice that this thumbnail does not have the edits on there. Okay, it looks the same as we first opened it compared to what it looks like now. It's pretty blown out in the highlights in the background here. However, there is this file here with the same name of the file, but the extension is .xmp. All those changes that I just showed you using that raw camera editor in Bridge were recorded in this .xmp file. So the next time I would open up Bridge would recognize this XMP file and understand that there were edits on this. Again, by nature, raw files cannot be edited. They can only be, only adjustments can be made to them with a sidecar file, which is called this XMP file. So you wouldn't want to give your raw files to anybody, because that would mean you'd have to give this file and then this XMP file in order for them to see it, but they would still need a raw processing editor such as Bridge, Lightroom, and Photoshop. All right. So what we're going to do now, or actually in the next video, I will show you how to export a raw image into different formats so people can actually look at your image and you can submit this work to a discussion board or as an assignment for a project.